I think too it's a good idea to prepare for an unexpected future, and on the surface these, through proposed savings, provide some sense of security for the future. They're a way of a refurbished rainy day funds, but what this government is unable and incapable of recognising is that for many, many people it's already raining, and raining heavy. And we need to access those windfall tax revenues right now to tackle the multiple crises in our public services: health, housing, cost of living, special needs, disability, etc., etc. The list goes on. And most people in this country are struggling because of failed government policies, which continue to prioritise the interests of the wealthiest in our society while neglecting the needs of most ordinary people. We now have consecutive budget surpluses which appear to give some sense of pride in a job well done, as you decide to take a substantial amount of people's money back from them and lock it away instead of giving it back to them when they most need it. One significant reason for your budget surplus is the lack of spending on public infrastructure, amenities and services across the country. And now that the government have this money, it is time to spend it for public good. You would say that the corporate tax revenues contributed to this budget surplus, and that we can't rely on a few multinational corporations for future tax revenues. But if you can't rely on future windfall corporate tax revenues, then why propose significant investments in these saving funds? You want to save for the future when it appears that you will take in more money than you will spend, but using these saving funds for your counter-cyclical fiscal measures cannot apply here. The people are already struggling with cost of living and the lack of public services, and they need to be prioritised. We need to make sure that we end homelessness and provide housing for all, stop the trolley crisis, make sure everyone can afford to survive in a cost of living crisis. Spend your excess on infrastructure for the people now, and if there are any remaining surpluses, investment funds. We need to fix crises now before we talk about saving. In terms of saving for the Future Ireland Fund will be used to support public expenditure in a consistent and sustainable manner from 2041 onwards. But it is unclear what this public expenditure will be. It could be paying for hospitals and schools, but it could also be used to bail out bondholders, like we did during the financial and economic crisis. A significant concern is that this fund will require 0.8% of GDP to be invested in it each year. That's the equivalent to spending the total of on the transport budget and almost as much as the housing budget in 2023. It's very important to emphasise that funding for the Future Ireland Fund will come from the central fund or tax revenues. Given such a large arbitrary investment amount, it would be inappropriate to link investment in this fund based on GDP only, which is already a very unreliable measure. For one, due to the foreign investment and the multinational corporations here that may withdraw monies from Ireland, yet the monies are accounted for in GDP. And with that, the location of investments or where the funds can be held, it's not just in Ireland. The fund can be invested anywhere, so taxpayers' money in Ireland could leave Ireland for fund ventures elsewhere. Our money should stay here, and it should be invested back into the Irish economy to help its people. We need to prioritise the domestic economy and improve economic activity here before lending to others abroad. In terms of the return on this investment, after investing in Irish business and Irish assets, there should be no risk-taking with this money, since the fund is a security and safety mechanism for the future. We should not be paying the stock market or other markets for the purposes of making money. If we do create this fund, pressures in the future and providing risk-free return only. There are also no provisions for drawdown before 2041, and I understand this is a future fund, but in an economic or societal emergency, there should be a possibility to use those savings to deal with unexpected events, and I'd like you to address that, Minister. On the Infrastructure and Climate Nature Fund, every year 2 billion from 2025 to 2030 will be transferred from the Central Fund to the Infrastructure, Climate and Nature Fund. This is a huge amount of money, which is equivalent to the total annual spending on the Garda Síochána. The bill indicates that from 2025, no more than 25% of the total fund can be transferred to the Exchequer in instance of deterioration in economic or fiscal positions of the state. In a potential future case of massive deficit or shortages for public expenditure and when funding is needed, why is the drawdown limited to 25% of the fund? Transfers to the government should be made in accordance with the needs of the people, instead of capping expenditure at a predetermined figure. It's also striking to read that only a minister can propose in writing a project that would help the environment and climate change, and that would require the transfer of funds. It appears that no other stakeholder needs to be consulted, and we talk all the time about just transition and community engagement when the decision is being made to use this fund for climate issues, and no committee will be consulted on potential environmental projects. Ministers seem to have the sole responsibility for this fund and decisions of where to invest and how much to invest. It's also clear from the proposed bill that from 2026 to 2030, at most 22.5% of the net asset value, the total funds less liabilities of the fund, or not exceeding 13 billion per year, can be invested in environmental projects. I'll just give that figure again for the record. 3.13 billion per year can be invested in environmental projects. This is a very specific proportion of the fund that can be invested to help the environment and climate change. But far greater investment may be needed in the near future if we are to take up on all the warnings that are being beamed at us globally and that we see around us, and indeed that the Minister Eamon Ryan outlined here yesterday in his speech welcoming the new Taoiseach. In conclusion, I want to reiterate that although we need to look to the future and save for unexpected expenditure, it is crucial that we fix the current state of our system. We need all the available resources right now to fix the housing crisis, healthcare, education, early childhood access issues before we start saving for the future unexpected events. We're in an emergency right now, and you need to listen to the people. You need to invest in the people right now and provide appropriate services and amenities across the country. You can spend right now on the environment and climate change and budget additional expenditures for the future. These funds require participation in capital markets, which means that taxpayers' monies will be gambled to provide an optimal return on the investment. We don't want optimal return. We want Irish taxpayers' money invested in Ireland and in safe and secure projects.